sorry to be a bit late.
Oh, no.
I just came from the Tesla factory in Fremont.
Yes. Wrong?
There's always something wrong.
Did you have to like...
At any given point, there's always something wrong.
Yes.
Because there's just too many things going on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the trickiest things about a car is that there's thousands of individual components. There are thousands of unique components. And even if one of those things is missing, you can't make cars.
Yes.
So, I mean, today's fiasco was, I kid you not, we were missing $3 USB cable. Okay, so we could not complete cars because...
The whole line was stopped.
Yeah,
So
essentially because it's part of the wiring harness, so you can't put the interior in without this cable. And so we could either make a whole bunch of cars minus an interior, which means that you got to stack them up in the yard.
The resale value would be no good.
Well, it can be done, but it's then things go out of sequence.
Oh, right.
And it's way more. It's way more you don't have a moving production line that you have to send people out to hundreds of cars that are sort of sitting in the storage yard, and so and this happens to be a particularly pernicious cable that's kind of like routed under the carpet and in a difficult place, and it's literally $3. So we basically had to send people throughout the Bay Area to go and buy USB cables.
Like literally Radio Shack. You like
Fry's.
Oh, Fry's. Oh, that's better.
You can have a hard time getting a USB cable right now at Fry's.
Oh, really?
We bought every one of them.
That's good.
And so we were able to continue production. And I don't want to belabor the anecdote, but essentially the supplier is in China, and we had Plan A and Plan B. And Plan A was like the normal supply chain process, and but what the supplier did was instead of sending our parts in their own package, they grouped it together with a bunch of other stuff for other companies and sent that all via some extremely slow boat from China to LA. And when it got to LA, the other stuff didn't pass customs.
Oh.
And so they wouldn't let our stuff through because
they put it in like a barrel of fruit or something.
I don't know what they put it in.
Yes.
But there's something that customs didn't like, and the paperwork wasn't in order or whatever. So it got stuck there for like a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And then we had Plan B. So we called them and said, look, you got to air freight some of these cables, because they're just little cables, to us. And we talked to their U.S. subsidiary and ordered from the U.S. subsidiary, who then communicated to China. But then, because this was another batch of parts, so it was kind of double the order, it exceeded the credit limit that we had.
Oh, yeah, you got to.
So it bounced off their credit limit, so they didn't ship it.
Fascinating. So someone's losing their job now. This is, no, I'm kidding. No, you should fire anyone.
It's pretty farcical.
Oh,
and anyway, so it's coming like tonight at 11 p.m. or something.
Wow. And these things are happening like all the time. This was like an unusual circumstance.
Yeah. That's like one example, but there's many things like that.
So I guess, that's actually a really good example, because that kind of leads into what I've always been fascinated by a lot of what you're doing is, well, I guess, I'll start with, how did you get into this?
Into cars?
Into cars, into taking over NASA, well, not taking over NASA, right. I know, being a contractor for NASA.
For the record, we're
not
taking over NASA.
You're not taking over NASA. They're an independent organization. But you all are becoming a major provider of services for NASA. Obviously, kind of internet payments and payments generally. These are three completely different spaces. I think a lot of people would not take someone seriously if they kind of had a business plan in one of these.
Right. Sorry to eat.
Oh yeah, you take your time. What was your? Did you always think you were going to be doing this, or when did it dawn on you that you would try to revolutionize three industries?
Well, when I was in college, I didn't actually expect to do it. So it was not like this is some long fulfilled expectation. But when I was in college, I thought about what are the areas that would most affect the future of humanity, in my opinion. And the three areas were the internet, sustainable energy, and space exploration, particularly if humanity becomes a multi-planet species. There's kind of like a pretty substantial bifurcation in our sort of future if we're either out there among the stars on multiple planets, or if we're confined to Earth until some obviously eventual extinction event.
Yeah.
Not that I'm pessimistic about life on Earth. I mean, I think some things are likely to be good.
But even
more likely to be good
yeah.
by far.
Yellowstone's due for an explosion every several
Right,
hundred thousand.
exactly.
Shantanu knows about that. Yeah. Yeah. It's been 700,000 since.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Super volcano, for those of you who don't know, it would envelop the, well, sorry.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Exactly. So
we read
I mean,
the same books, I can tell.
Right, absolutely. Yes. I mean, something bad is bound to happen if you give it enough time. And civilization has been around for such a very short period of time that these timescales seem like very long, but on a evolutionary timescale, they're very short.
Yeah.
A million years on evolutionary timescale is really not much. And Earth's been around for 4.5 billion years.
Yeah.
So that's a very tiny, tiny amount of time, really. But for us, that would be. I mean, can you imagine if human civilization continued at anything remotely like the current pace of technology advancement for 1 million years? Where would we be?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're either extinct or on a lot of planets.
Yes, we should.
Those are the two options.
But given that, I mean, one, that's kind of as epic as one can think about things. I mean, literally. I mean, how did you make that concrete? How does that turn into SpaceX, Tesla, and PayPal?
Well, so I thought about these things kind of in the abstract, not from the expectation that I would actually have careers in those arenas, but I wanted to be involved in at least one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I thought the best bet was going to be electric cars.
Yeah.
And so the area that I was studying was advanced capacitors. Right? So essentially capacitors that have an energy density exceeding that of batteries. Because they have a very high power density, but a low energy density.
Yeah.
We have a lecture to that
Yeah.
effect.
Oh, yes. Yes. No, we should do that. We'll get later. But yeah.
Exactly. Obviously, if you could make a capacitor that had anywhere near the energy density of a battery, and with this incredibly high power density and its quasi-infinite cycle and calendar life, then you would have an awesome solution for energy storage in mobile applications. Yeah. So that I was going to sort of work on that and try to leverage the equipment that was developed for advanced chip making and photonics to create ultra-precise capacitors at the molecular level.
And this is when you were going to go into grad school?
Yeah,
you had a brief stint at Stanford.
That's right. Yeah.
At a PhD in applied physics?
Applied physics, material science.
Right. This is what you were, so even then you were thinking of kind of trying to do something in the space.
Well, actually this was to work on energy storage solutions for electric cars.
Yeah.
And I'd actually worked at a company in Silicon Valley called Pinnacle Research, which did advanced capacitors. They were electrolytic capacitors, but the problem, and they actually were pretty good. They had like the energy density of a lead-acid battery, which for a capacitor that's a big deal. But they used ruthenium tantalum oxide, and I think at the time there was maybe like 1 or 2 tons of ruthenium mined per year in the world.
See.
So it's not a scalable solution. Yeah. But I thought there could be some solid-state solution, say using chip-making equipment. That was going to be the basic idea. But it was one of those things where I wasn't sure if success was one of the possible outcomes. And it's difficult to bound that problem exactly and say, okay.
So you're saying I felt like this was a destined failure, is another way to parse that sentence. But anyway, sorry.
No, I didn't think it would fail, but I wasn't sure that success was a possibility.
Okay, yes.
And generally, you want to embark on something, it's desirable to figure out if success is at least one of the possibilities.
Right, exactly.
Because for sure failure is one of the possibilities.
Yes.
But ideally you want to try to bracket it and say success is in the envelope of outcomes.
Yeah.
And I wasn't quite sure if that was the case. I think success on an academic level would have been quite likely because you can publish some useless paper, and most papers are pretty useless.
We have a few. Don't take offense. Sorry.
I mean,
we have
how many PhD papers are actually used by someone ever? No,
that's a good point.
Percentage-wise, it's not good.
Yeah.
So it could have been one of those outcomes where you add some leaves to the tree of knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that leaf is, nope, it's not possible.
Right.
Like,
Right.
there goes 7 years of my life. So that was one path, and I was prepared to do that. But then the internet came along, and I was like, okay, the internet. I'm pretty sure success is one of the possible outcomes, and it seemed like I could either do a PhD and watch the internet happen, or I could participate and help build it in some fashion. Like I just couldn't stand the idea of watching it happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so I decided to put things on hold and start an internet company. And that was kind of we worked on internet like publishing software, maps and directions, yellow pages, kind of things. Yeah. And we had as investors and customers the media companies, so like New York Times Company, Knight Ridder.
And this was just at the early stages. I mean, this was like late
95.
95. Oh, so it's really early stages. That's really out the gate. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so then the reason we worked with the media companies is because we knew they had money. Like there was no advertising money in '95.
Right.
In fact, the idea of advertising the internet seemed like a ridiculous thing to people. Obviously not so ridiculous anymore, but at the time it seemed like a very unlikely proposition. And a lot of the media companies weren't even sure that they should be online.
Right.
Like what's the point of that? Yeah.
And did y'all think that PayPal was just going to be a simple little internet way to, or do you think it was going to turn into the major kind of transaction processing engine that it is right now?
I didn't expect PayPal's growth rate to be what it was.
Yeah.
So, and that actually created major problems. So we started PayPal on University Avenue.
Oh. Yeah.
After the first month or so of the website being active, we had 100,000 customers.
Really? Wow, I didn't realize it was.
Yeah, it was nutty.
Oh, wow. And how did it start? How did people just even know to use it? And I mean, obviously, both buyer and seller have to be involved.
Yeah. Well, we started off first by offering people $20 if they opened an account, and $20 if they referred anyone.
Oh.
And then we dropped it to $10, and then we dropped it to $5. As the network got bigger and bigger, the value of the network itself exceeded any sort of carrot that we could offer.
So how much money did y'all spend with that kind of $5, $10, $20 incentive to get that critical mass going?
That was a fair amount. I think it was probably $60 or $70 million.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it was a
Yeah,
substantial. Oh, okay. So we're not talking peanuts here. Yeah, this is.
Yeah, it depends on your relative scale.
Yeah,
it's a peanut to Google.
Yes, no, that's right. That's right.
Here's a peanut.
Yes.
I mean, like Google's got 50 billion, Apple's got, I don't know, 150 billion, some crazy amount of money.
Wow,
That's just cash.
Yeah. So it's not an outland. Well, yeah, no, I didn't realize
Like
that was
1%
so
of Google's
core.
cash would be $500 million. So that's 0.1% of Google's cash.
That's true. You're right. That's inexpensive.
It's relative to them, it's pretty inexpensive.
Yeah, well, that's right.
And then we just did a bunch of things to decrease the friction because it's just like bacteria in a petri dish.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is try to have one customer generate like two customers.
Yeah.
Okay, or something like that, maybe three customers ideally. And then you want that to happen really fast. You could probably model it just like bacterial growth in a petri dish. And it'll just it'll expand very quickly until it hits the sides of the petri dish. And it just slows down.
And then after PayPal, then, I mean, to some degree, especially us in Silicon Valley, we kind of understand the internet. We know people. I mean, PayPal is obviously of a scale that, is noteworthy. But then SpaceX just seems really, like, how did you decide that I'm definitely going to do that? And then, like, what's the first thing that you do? Like, how do you even, like, go out? Like, I don't even know how to start trying to make a rocket company.
Well, neither did I really. And in fact, the first three launches failed, so it's not as though it was like, spot on. It's like, did not hit the bullseye.
But even getting to the point that you're launching rockets, I don't even know how do you get there? And like, what did you do on, like, how did you decide, and then what did you do on day one? Like, who did you call, or did you write a plan? Did you start? I don't even know.
Yeah, actually, I mean, the origin of PayPal or rather, SpaceX is that I was trying to figure out why that we had not sent any people to Mars. because the obvious next step after Apollo was to send people to Mars. So, but what in fact happened was that we sent a few people to the moon, and then we didn't send anyone after that to the moon or Mars or anything. But if you'd asked people in 1969, what would 2013 look like? They would have said there'll be a base on the moon. We would have at least sent some people to Mars, and maybe there'd even be a base on Mars. There'd be like orbiting space hotels, and there'd be all this awesome stuff in space. And that's what people expected. And if you'd said, well, actually, the United States in 2013 will not be able to send anyone to orbit. But I'll tell you what will exist is that there'll be this device in your pocket that's like the size of smaller than a deck of cards that has access to all the world's information, and you can talk to anyone on planet Earth. And even if you're like in some remote village somewhere, as long as there's something called the internet, they wouldn't know what that means, of course, then you'd be able to communicate to anyone instantly and have access to all of humanity's knowledge. I said like bullshit. There's no way that that's going to be
Right.
And yet we all have that, and space is not happening. So I was trying to figure out like what was the deal here, and this was like 2001. And it was just a friend of mine asked me what I'm going to do after PayPal. And I said, well, I've always been interested in space, but I don't think there's anything that an individual could do in space because it's the province of government, and usually large government. But I'm curious as to when we're going to send someone to Mars. So I went to the NASA website, tried to figure out like, where's the place that tells you that, and I couldn't find that. So I thought, well, like either I'm like bad at looking at the website, or they have a terrible website because surely there must be a date.
That should be a big date. Yeah.
It should be like this should be on the front page. And then I discovered actually that NASA had no plans to send people to Mars, or even really back to the moon. So this was really disappointing. I thought, well, maybe this is a question of national will. Like, do we need to get people excited about space again, and try to get NASA a bigger budget, and then we would send people to Mars. And so I started researching the area, becoming more familiar with space, reading lots of books, and